All right, so much art history and never enough time to cover it all. So let's go run through the art museum. On your next empty page, at the top, at the header, write chapter 5, or you could write Greek art. Then go to your table of contents and write that page number in the table of contents next to Greek art. And as a reminder, I want 5 hand drawn sketches per chapter. We're starting Unit 2, so you will do a detailed drawing for Unit 2 due the day of the test. An article will also be due the day of the test. All right, so let's dive into this. Where is Europe on this map? That's right, it's directly above Africa. It is top center. So let's take a closer look at Europe and where is Greece in this map? This is the one with all the islands. Yes, very good. So, down, let's take a closer look at Greece. In the modern day, like Greece now covers all of this above, but in the ancient times, Greece was pretty much this area down here. It was this area is called Attica. This is the Peloponnese. This is Crete down here. And then we have the western edge of Turkey, which is the eastern edge of Greece on these islands over here. And that is all part of Greece. All right, so there are different divisions in Greek art. All right, there's the geometric, the orientalizing, archaic, early classical, high classical, late classical, and Hellenistic. Because of time constraints, we're going to skip the first two and we are going to start with archaic. I need to make a correction down here. So excuse me. All right, we are going to jump into Greek art like I jump in the pool, in the deep end, without dipping my toe in first. So we're going to start with the archaic period and their statuary. We're going to watch just a few minutes of this.
So these are the tools, and then yeah, if you want to turn this on, but anyway. Guess where we are today, guys? JTV. We have liquid personality in this cup. The pillowcase. What is this? No card, guys? Can I just... Hey, this is gonna be fun! Okay, this is beautiful. I'm guessing that's marble. This is heavy. Can I seriously try? I am definitely not successful, but hey, that's okay, because the best part about this episode today is that I have a fantastic sculptor and artist. So everyone, I'm gonna bring Jean in, and hopefully she's gonna tell me all the fun stuff I have right here. I was surprised. Okay, everyone, this is Jean. Jean, say hi to YouTube. Hi, YouTube. I'm excited to be here. So what's going on? What's the episode about today? What is this? So I was told that you have done a series on marble. We have. We've talked about marble and granite. We have a geologist in-house that's come on before and talked. Well, so I'm an artist, I'm a sculptor, and marble is one of the things I love most. It's a little hard to describe. It's something that just happens when I touch it. There's a sensation that happens in my body that relaxes me. I can work for hours and lose time when I'm touching it, working with it, and having fun with it, and it's hard work. How did you learn to carve marble? Because I tried a little bit, and you can't even see the scratch I did. I'm still in the process of learning.
Eyes up on the screens, phones down.
This is Tennessee marble. It's got these really beautiful crystals that shine and shimmer. Take the hammer, because a lot of times people ask me, when I show them my work, they'll say, how do you get started? Do you use power tools? What do you do? And I always just say chisel and hammer, because it's the basics. And I think I've had this chisel since I was 21. How long have you been carving? I have an art degree. I started sculpting in stone when I was in college, and then I didn't do it for 30 years, and I just started again 5 years ago. You generally start at an angle, and it just makes it look like... Sorry for things flying. And you just kind of decide you're going to own it. I do have a lighter hammer here, too, if you want to try. Well, I work out. Oh, shoot. Look, I only made a line. You actually got some of it off. Well, I'll try again. Yeah, this is really relaxing. Right? So tell me about the differences on, what is each... This is the chisel I tend to use the most because it's got the prongs, and you don't worry.
That's called a tooth chisel.
Lines. So you can see that it makes these lines, which help you. For me, it's almost like drawing
your shape. So as I go around the piece, it helps me create knowing where I'm going. This chisel is a way to move stone. So
That one's called a point. It's like a giant metal pencil.
drawing lines, you can make lines with it where you go like this, and then you kind of take out a line, you store a line, it moves a lot of stuff. And I will also say, usually I'm in the head, like you have your mouth covered and your eyes covered, your ears covered, hair covered, like when I'm working, it's because it goes right a lot of dust. Yeah. So your point is to move a lot of stone, and this is more like refine things, and it takes out all those lines.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about why you use Italian and Tennessee.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. I just wanted you to see people using those tools. Our first Greek work of art is called a KOUROS, Kouros. And I want you to notice the stance or the pose of the KOUROS. Notice that it is standing up and one leg is forward. Which leg is forward? The left leg is forward. What are the arms doing? Right, they're by the side. What are the hands doing? The hands are balled up like fists. Do you see that? All right, and I talked about this before, like with that one leg being forward, there should be a shift in the hips. When I talked about this with the Egyptian art, and there isn't. All right, so either that leg is longer than the other, very slightly, or the Greek artists at this point had not yet studied the nuance of the human body, that when you have one leg go forward, the hips shift a little bit. But you can see where the Greeks got their influence from, and it is the same pose as that of the Egyptians and this Egyptian statuary. And the Egyptians are just right across the Mediterranean. So the Egyptians and the Greeks are intermingling with trade. They're visiting each other's places. So they're seeing what is going on in the other places. And so they're able to adapt and adopt some of the visuals from one culture into another. This gives you a sense of the size of a KOUROS. It's a rather large sculpture. The KOUROS it's a male sculpture, and the counterpart for the KOUROS is the KOUROS. And so there is a 50-year difference between these statues. So they're all made kind of at the same time. These had a funerary purpose, that they are grave markers. They are at the entrances of people's graves or inside of their tombs. And they are sort of a votive offering in sanctuaries. And the word KOUROS means youth. And these are the first monumental sculptures of the Greek culture. The two eras that we skipped, those were very small sculptures and mostly pottery. Now, what do you notice is the main difference between the KOUROS and the KOUROS? What is it? KOUROS has clothes. That's exactly right. All right. So the males are nude, whereas the females are clothed. In the Greek culture at that time, the nude male athletic body was seen as beautiful, and the female body was not. It was different than our culture today. So if you take like a typical prom photo, or if you have a day at the beach, all right. So when you look at the day at the beach or a prom photo, who is showing off more skin, the males or the females? The females are showing off more skin. That's our culture. That the female form is more beautiful and the male form is more industrial or functional. But with the Greeks, it was quite the opposite. All right, this particular KOUROS here is called the New York KOUROS. And I have this image right here that shows just how cartoonish and idealized that this sculpture is. Notice the hair is very stylized. It has and we'll look closer at the hair in just a second. The chest is very stylized. The abdomen is very stylized. Even the knees have these weird waterline or something, and the elbows are very stylized. You have this V shape in the elbow. So it's almost like a cartoon of a person rather than a realistic person. Here's the backside, and we get a 3/4 view. And we look up close at the hair. Here we can see the idealized or the cartoonish hair. It does not look like hair at all. The cartoonish torso. And with other KOUROS, he had this like weird hair as well, this cartoonish hair. But I want to point out his face. What expression does he have on his face? He's smiling, right? And you're right. I think he's smiling. It's a smirk, right? It's this very slight smile. He's not smiling for the camera like a big wide smile. It's a smirk, right? And that is called the archaic smile. And all of these very old Greek sculptures have the same expression on their face. And if we look at the backs of these KOUROS sculptures, the muscles in the back are very cartoonish and unrealistic, which is typical of the KOUROS. And again, look at the hair. That is not hair. That's like a flat blanket, like an Afghan blanket or a knitted blanket. Now, this one right here, KOUROS, has an inscription that says, "Stay and mourn at the tomb of dead KOUROS, whom raging Ares destroyed one day as he fought in the foremost ranks." So that's one of the reasons why art historians know that these are funerary sculptures, because the inscriptions on them refer to the person that they are for and how they have passed on. This one is a lot more realistic than the earlier KOUROS sculptures. It's not as cartoonish in the figure. In fact, we can look at this one, we can compare the two, and just a 70-year difference, you can see the improvement of the realism of the sculpture. I also want to point out the ankles. Do the ankles look weird to you? Or the transition from the ankle to the foot? Don't they look a little bit big to you? Like cankles, all right? That the reason for that is to support the sculpture. I told you that stone is a very hard substance, but when you have it in a very narrow configuration, like an arm, a neck, or a leg, then it becomes very weak. We have so much weight up here that it is be very easy for the ankles to break. And I'm quite sure that some of these have broken and they've been put back together. But they made these ankles thicker than realistic because they wanted to support the weight. And that's another reason for the hair. The hair is long, and that hair, the neck and the hair make a thicker part of the sculpture so it won't break off. Also, these were polychrome. So I want you to know that term, polychrome. This is a Roman sculpture, but it is a good example of polychrome. Polychromes means that they would paint on it. It's quite disturbing how garish the colors are, or in my opinion, the polychrome just makes it look ugly. These flat colors, it's colored in like a coloring book, and there's no nuance, there's no shading, there's no highlights and shadows. So it looks odd, like a coloring book. So we're used to these ancient sculptures looking like this, but when in actuality, they looked more like this. So on the left, we have a copy of the sculpture in its polychrome. Over on the right, they put the polychrome back onto the sculpture, or those are copies. I have seen in museums that instead of a plaster copy next to the sculpture, they would have a picture or a computer screen that has a digital image of what the sculpture would look like in polychrome. And I think I prefer that better. All right, I want you to look at this Berlin Kore. This was taken from the cemetery at Karadia. And they don't know if she's a priestess or an attendant or possibly even a goddess. But the reason why I like to put this slide or this image into the and to look at it is to look at the drapery of the body here. The drapery masks the body. The patterns mimic contours. Like it's a love of pattern instead of being realistic. So I'm talking about these vertical lines here on the dress and the vertical line or these curved lines up on the shoulders here. And how if this was, it is typical of a dress to have these folds and curves that go vertical on a dress, but this is not natural. It's very cartoonish, it's very like stiff, and it doesn't follow the contours of the human body. It's almost like it, to me, it looks like the stone that she is carved from. It doesn't look soft, it doesn't look natural. By the way, in her right hand, she would have held a pomegranate, and that is the symbol of Persephone. Here's the back of, and then the feet look like blocks of stone as well. Also, she would have been polychrome. You can see the different colors in the stone. It's all one stone, so the stain of the colors is still visible. But she looks like a block of stone. I want you to know what a peplos is. Peplos is a type of Greek dress. And when I say a columnar appearance, that means she looks like a column. These vertical lines in the folds of the dress look like the fluting of a column. When you see this sculpture called a peplos kore, now you know what that peplos refers to. It refers to the dress that she is wearing there. Her extended left arm is different from before. So they think that it was holding a votive offering for Athena's sanctuary, or possibly holding an apple. Do you remember the story I told you of the Trojan War? What fruit started the Trojan War? Do you remember the golden apple that Eros threw into the wedding party, and the goddesses were fighting over it? And then they had to ask Paris to judge between them, and then that caused him to fall in love with Helen, and then that set off the Trojan War. It was all started. If she hadn't thrown an apple into there, the Trojan War wouldn't have happened. All right. So, but also in Greek culture or in ancient Greek culture, if you threw an apple at a girl, that means that you were proposing marriage. And if she caught it, that meant that she accepted the marriage or accepts your proposal. And we can see a little bit of the polychrome in the hair and in the eyes and the lips. And then here are some what they think the polychrome would have looked like. And then here, what's new on this one is the asymmetrical composition. No longer is the dress the same on both sides, but it is it comes over one shoulder instead of both. And then notice the hair now begins to go around the forms of the body, and you can see that again over here. All right, so they're being a little bit more natural with the way the hair goes around the body. However, the hair still looks unrealistic. But you know what it looks like to me? It looks like ramen. It looks like these people have ramen for hair. But I want you to look at like how far the Kore has come from the one on the left, the Berlin Kore, who looks like a block of stone. Now the one on the right looks so much more realistic, not very realistic, but a lot more realistic than the Berlin Kore. And you can see that the the clothes and the hair is now going around the forms. And they often, these kore would hold objects. So you can see that there is this hole here and a hole here. That's where the arm would have been in. It would have had like possibly a second stone that slides into that hole. And it was a sculpture of a hand or an arm with a hand holding a ceremonial object. Maybe a little jar of oil that was lit, maybe some wine for the god or goddess, or maybe like a pomegranate or an apple. All right, so let's take a look at vase painting. This is a good video on how to paint and make a vase.
To make a vase, workers first mined naturally occurring clay and mixed it with water in outdoor pools. Impurities in the clay would sink to the bottom. As the water evaporated, it left behind a layer of purified clay, which was then kneaded by workers to make it more malleable. To start to form a vase, a mass of clay is centered on a potter's wheel. In ancient times, the wheel would have been rotated manually by the potter or his assistant. This modern electric-powered wheel works the same way. With his hands, the potter forms a depression in the middle of the clay. By pulling outward and upward slowly, he carefully forms the clay into the desired shape, depending on which type of vessel he is making. We don't know exactly what tools ancient craftsmen employed, but in addition to their hands, they may have used wooden and metal implements, as well as sponges, to shape and smooth the clay. The next day, when the vessel has dried slightly, excess clay is trimmed away and the surface is smoothed. A separately made foot is applied for stability. Handles made from coiled clay complete the shape of the vessel. Once the vessel has been shaped, it's prepared for painting. A fine liquid clay called slip is painted onto areas that the artisan wishes to be black. To provide a background for further decoration, an unpainted field is left here on the front side. This unpainted area will be decorated with a scene painted in the black figure technique. After the clay had dried to a leathery, hard texture, the vase painter could make a preliminary sketch in charcoal, which would disappear later during firing. Using the charcoal sketch as a guide, slip would be used to add silhouetted forms, often of human figures. Details and interior lines were then incised through the slip to reveal the leather-colored clay below. Additional details were often added using red ochre. When fired, it would turn purple to depict clothing, blood, and other details. To produce white, a pure clay with minimal iron oxide was used, often chosen to depict women's skin, marble objects, animals, and patterns. With the painting complete, the vessel was ready to be fired in a kiln. This three-step firing process lasted approximately 6 to 8 hours, but since there were no precise thermometers or accurate clocks, it required great precision and experience on the part of the craftsman. First, the temperature of the kiln was raised to about 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. By allowing air into the upper chamber of the kiln, an oxygen-rich atmosphere was created. This produced red ferric oxide in both the clay and slip, which caused both to turn red. Second, the temperature was raised further to about 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. Air vents were closed and damp wood or wet leaves were placed in the stoking tunnel of the kiln. This created an oxygen-poor and carbon-rich environment. This produced black ferrous oxide in the clay and slip, which turned both from red to black. At this point, the slip became a glossy shell that was resistant to any further changes. In the third and final step, air was permitted to enter the upper chamber of the kiln again, creating an oxygen-rich environment once more. The surface of the vessel not covered in slip turned from black back to red, and the glossy slip-covered areas, such as figures, remained black. The kiln required around 12 hours to fully cool down, after which the vases could be removed.
All right, so that is how they do make these black figure and red figure clay pieces. So there's different styles of the Greek vases. So this particular shape right here is called an amphora. But I want you to know the different parts of the vase. We have the lip at the top, the neck, the shoulder is where it gets wider. The body is where the largest part of the vase is, and then we have the foot at the bottom. Now I remember why I had this on here. They should have drawn this. Yeah, it's in my notes. Draw this in your notes. All right. So this is called black figure vase painting, where the figures are the people and they are painted in black. And when I say painted, I use that term loosely. It's not paint. It's different forms of clay. So when it fires, some types of clay turn red, some types of clay turn black. And I do want you to know in art history that the term figure means a person, the human figure. All right, so when we talk about figure drawing, we're drawing the human figure. When we talk about figurative art, it's art about the human figure. In fact, these two paintings, or this painting and the sculpture, it's not about any particular person, it's not about any particular narrative. It is a study of the human figure. So when you see black figure vase painting, then we're looking at the figures or the people are painted in black and the background is painted in red. Black figure vase painting isn't just about the human figure, though. There are other things in there too, like the horsies. With black figure vase painting, it is the subject that is black. So the subject in this one is people on horsies fighting each other.
Do you think the horses like know that they're fighting, or do you think they're just happy to like?
The question is, do the horses know that they're fighting, or are they just happy to be ridden? I think that horses feel fear because I know that when they get into certain situations, they act in a fearful manner. I don't know if in battle that they're trained to overcome that, right? But I think they're trained to charge into battle, and whether they feel fear at that time, I don't know. Thetis and Peleus have a child named Achilles. Peleus is mortal, he's a king, and Thetis is immortal. She is a deity, and she wants Achilles to be safe. So, what she does is she dips Achilles into the river Styx, and this makes him invulnerable to weapons. All right, now later on, he becomes best friends with Patroclus. They grow up together and they are trained together. Later on, Achilles is trained by Chiron. You watch the movie Hercules by Disney, the satyr trains Hercules, same way that Chiron trains Achilles. So he trains him to be a total badass in war. All right, so this is a time where they just realized that Paris has just kidnapped Helen. So they're calling for war, and the priest says, wait, the prophecy says that you cannot win without Achilles. In order to win and get Helen back, you have to have Achilles. But there's also another prophecy, is that if Achilles fights in the Trojan War, he will die. And Achilles' mother, Thetis, the one who dipped him in the water, doesn't want him to die. That's why she dipped him in the water. And she knows that if he goes to fight in the Trojan War, he's going to die. So she dresses him up like a woman and hides him among, the Lycomedes on Skyros, the island of Skyros. And so he's dressed as a woman and hanging out with all the girls. Well, the army that needs him to fight comes to get him. His friend Odysseus comes, and Odysseus is a very smart guy, and Odysseus can see through the disguise and calls him out. Achilles basically says, yes, I'll go and fight with you. I don't really want to spend the rest of my days dressed up like a woman, so I'll go and fight. Athena gives Achilles the Aegis. The Aegis is a shield sometimes it's a breastplate, but it has Medusa's head on it. Do you guys, I haven't told you about Medusa, but you probably heard of Medusa. What's unusual about Medusa? Snakes in her hair, right? She has snakes for hair. And also, what can she do to you? Turns you to stone. But how does she do that? Right. And if your armor has her head on it and you're fighting somebody, they're going to have a hard time fighting you because they're trying to avoid the gaze of Medusa. So it's a very powerful tool, that this Aegis. And most often, though, it's on. In fact, you can see Medusa's head right there on her breastplate. The Aegis is usually a breastplate, but in this case, it is a shield. We're now in deep in the Trojan War. And Achilles is an absolute monster on the battlefield. He kills Trojans left and right. He kills them by the dozens. He's the kind of guy that's on a chariot with his armor that is made by the gods and his weapons that are made by the gods. And his chariot is plowing through the Trojans and he's killing people left and right. He has like a spear or a javelin, and he's spearing 4 and 5 guys at a time on his javelin. He's that kind of a soldier. He's that kind of a badass. All right, now, apart from the fighting between the Trojans, so here we have Troy, and all around Troy, there's other little cities. And one by one, the Greeks conquer those little cities that are around Troy. And from these cities, they take food and drink, they take the livestock, they take all the riches, and you know what else they take? They take the women. And then they distribute the women to the heroes of the Greek army. So here we have Agamemnon over here on the left. This is Achilles in the middle. This is Diomedes on the right. And there are lots of other heroes and generals and kings that are fighting on the side of the Greeks. But these are the three of my favorites: Agamemnon, Achilles, and Diomedes. Each one gets a woman that has been taken from the neighboring towns. Now, the father of one of those women comes to Agamemnon and says, "Can I please have my daughter back?" Right? But this father is also a priest of Apollo. And Agamemnon says, "No, all right, I got her in battle, and so I'm going to keep her." So the priest prays to Apollo and says that, I, as a priest of Apollo, have been disrespected, and therefore you have been disrespected, Apollo. So what are you going to do to fix this? Apollo causes a lot of the Greeks start dying. And in order to fix it, Agamemnon returns the daughter to the priest, and therefore Agamemnon is without a woman, and there's no more women left to give to him. So he decides he's going to take Achilles' woman, and so Achilles reluctantly gives his woman to Agamemnon, and Achilles is pissed off and he pouts. He does this epic hissy fit and he says, "All right, but I'm not going to fight for you anymore. I'm just going to sit on the beach while you guys fight the war against the Trojans, and me and my army, we're just going to sit this out. You can fight without me. If you're going to treat me like that, you're going to fight without me." And what happens is without Achilles being on the battlefield, the most badass of warriors, and his badass army, the Trojans start winning. The Trojans are really kicking the asses of the Greeks, and they are begging Achilles to come back to the battlefield. And he says, "No, all right, you disrespected me. I'm not going to fight for somebody that disrespects me." All right, so what happens then? It looks like the Greeks are going to lose this whole war. They've been fighting for years, and they're going to lose because Achilles is not fighting with them. So Patroclus, you remember Patroclus, the friend of Achilles? He's there at the Trojan War. He dresses up like Achilles, and he wears Achilles' armor. He gets in Achilles' chariot. He has Achilles' weapons, and he goes out into the battlefield and begins to fight, pretending to be Achilles. And at first, the Greeks or the Trojans are scared. They look out and they see, "Oh crap, Achilles is back on the battlefield." So for a while, he is really hurting the Trojans. In fact, his ruse or his trickery, making the Trojans think that Achilles is back on the field, they run and hide. And so they go back into the walls of Troy. All right. And it looks like the Greeks are going to win. They're chasing the Trojans back into the walls. All right. But there's one Trojan that didn't run, and that was Hector. Hector knows that this is not Achilles because Hector has fought Achilles before. Hector is the biggest, baddest hero of the Trojans. So he's way more powerful than Patroclus. Anyways, he fights with Patroclus. He kills Patroclus and he takes Achilles' armor. When Achilles hears that his best friend for his whole life has been killed, he throws another fit. He's in a fit of rage. He is crying. He is tearing his hair out. He is on the beach, pounding the sand and wailing over the death of his friend. His mother, the goddess Thetis, hears him and comforts him and gets him new armor. So she goes up to Mount Olympus and gets Hephaestus to make new armor for Achilles. In the meantime, Ajax, another hero of the Greeks, brings the body of Patroclus back to the camp of the Greeks. Achilles gets his brand new armor. Achilles makes up with Agamemnon because he's absolutely furious at Hector for killing his best friend. So he's going to go back to a fight, and they both make up. Agamemnon gives Achilles his woman back. And then Achilles goes out onto the field and he is looking for Hector. And he is plowing through all of the Greeks, the Trojans. He is killing them left and right, looking for Hector. And then he finds Hector. And he and Hector have an epic battle. Achilles wins, and Achilles is so enraged at Hector. He's so angry at Hector. He ties the body of Hector to his chariot and he rides the chariot around the walls of Troy for 3 days, nonstop, crying and tearing his hair out. All right, sometime later, they are back at war. All right, this is days, weeks, months later. I don't know. Achilles is fighting and he chases the Trojans back to the city of Troy. And it looks like this is it. We've been fighting for 9 years. This is it. We're going to win. We're chasing them back into the gates. And as soon as the gates are open to let them in, we're going in and we're going to burn the city to the ground once and for all. And he's just about to win. He's inches from winning. And Apollo appears before him and says, "Stop. It is not your fate to take down the city of Troy. You are fated for something else." And basically, Achilles says to Apollo, the god of the sun, he rides the sun chariot across the sky every day. This is a very powerful god. And Achilles says to him, basically, F off. So Apollo goes up to the top of the walls of Troy, and he guides Paris to shoot an arrow into the heel of Achilles. But how can this be? He was covered in the river Styx, that he's impervious for any weapon. Well, his mother, as she held him by the heel and dipped him in, it was where she held him that did not get touched by the river Styx. And that's where he was shot. I'm guessing it's a poison arrow. All right, so Achilles dies on the battlefield. And then all the Trojans want the armor of Achilles. They're going to steal his second set of armor. So Ajax is standing over the body of Achilles, keeping the Trojans away from stealing the armor. Odysseus comes to help. And Odysseus holds back the Trojans while Ajax carries the body of Achilles back to the camp. They have a huge funeral for Achilles. So then it becomes time to give the armor of Achilles to the person that helped him the most. And that person is obviously Ajax. Ajax brought back the body of Patroclus. Ajax fought off the Trojans so that he could bring back the body of Achilles, and Ajax is the one that saved the armor of Achilles. And Ajax has been a friend of Achilles for many, many years. Well, Odysseus is awarded the armor instead of Ajax, and Ajax is furious. In fact, Ajax goes into such a rage, he kills a few of the Greeks. And when he comes out of that rage, he is so embarrassed by his behavior that he commits suicide. All right, that is the story of Achilles and Ajax. So here we have a vessel, a pottery of Achilles and Ajax. And it's one of the first times that artists have signed artwork. This is a black figure vase. And Ezekias, the artist, is the most famous Greek vase painter and potter. And actually, this vase right here was found in Italy. There were Greek colonies in Italy. This is the reverse side of Achilles and Ajax playing a game of dice. So here we have two of the most famous and most badass warriors playing a game during their leisure time during the Trojan War. Achilles is on the left, Ajax is on the right. If we look closely, we can see the signature of the artist, and it basically says, Ezekias made me. This is kind of unusual where the artist makes the pot and paints it. Usually have one artist that makes the vessel, another artist paints it. They are both labeled, so that's why we know who these are. This is Achilles. This is Ajax. Achilles says 4. All right, it's Tessara, which is Greek for 4, and Ajax says Tria, which is Greek for 3. Achilles is winning the game. And it is perhaps good that Achilles is winning the game because he's going to die the following day. And it will be Ajax that returns his body and armor to the Greeks. And this is the calm before the storm. Achilles is going to die the next day of battle. And Ajax is going to commit suicide over not getting Achilles' armor. But I do want to say that it is common for soldiers in their downtime to play games. You can see these World War I soldiers and these Civil War soldiers playing games as they wait in between battles. And on this one, this is just a little bit more of the story. So we're going to look at this handle right here. We're going to get close to the handle, and we can see Ajax carrying the body of Achilles from the battlefield of Troy. And then here is Ajax setting up his sword in order to commit suicide. All right, now on the left, this is a black figure painting. On the right, this is what is called red figure painting. And this particular vase, this is a separate vase from the one I showed you earlier, but this is one, it shows the same story, but it's black figure on one side, red figure on the other one, and that is called a bilingual vase, where it has black figure and red figure on the same vase. The previous artist that I told you guys about was Ezekias, is that right? And up here we have Endocades. And Endocades is, I think, the first artist to use red figure. Is this red figure or black figure? It is red figure. Euthymides is the artist. This CA in front of a date, that means circa, that means around. All right, so there's something funny about this face right here. All right, there's a couple of points of interest. All right, Euthymides was in competition with another artist whose name was Euphronius. And written on the vase, it says, Euthymides painted me as never Euphronius could do. He's saying, I can paint better than Euphronius. All right, and we have 3 revelers. Do you know what a reveler is? Or do you know what it means to revel? Yes, it's party, right? So, and what do you, especially in ancient times, what do you think they do when they party? Yes. So we have three drunk guys right here. And this is a wine jar. And one thing I want to point out, if it shows up. Oh, yes, it's the first time we have a 3/4 view. This guy right here in the center, his back is frontal, his head is frontal, and his legs are profile, but his butt is in a 3/4 view. All right, so it's not a side view like we would have seen with the Egyptians. It's not a frontal view. It is a 3/4 view. And this is the opposite side of Hector getting ready for battle. You remember that Hector is the one that killed Patroclus. Hector is the one that was dragged around the city of Troy for 3 days. All right, and this one is a very shallow drinking cup, and it's not what's on the outside that is important. It is what is on the inside that is important. But I'm going to go back and look at my notes here. All right, so at this time, it is very unusual because we're still in the archaic period. It is very unusual to have a nude female. All right, most of the males are nude and the women are clothed. But here we have a slave girl who is getting ready for a bath. And also, that is also unusual because she is not a god or a goddess. She is not an important person of history. She is just a regular person. She's an everyday woman doing an everyday activity. And her torso is in 3/4 view, which is also new to art.